What's going on, everybody? Welcome back again to The Haunted Beard. My name is Jake, and thank you for joining me today. Well, today we are continuing our franchise series of reviews of Final Destination. We're here to talk about Final Destination 3. Here we go, let's do it. So Final Destination 3 continues the series in much of the exact same way as the previous two installments. We've got a brand new set of characters, and of course, death is after them again, and attempts to kill them in more elaborate and ridiculous ways. And there is some striking similarities between this film and the first film, even more so than just kind of the general storyline. And the film starts off, we're introduced to our two main characters, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who plays Wendy, and Ryan Merriman.
Saints preserve us. I am getting shorter.
And they are on their high school senior trip, exactly like the characters in the first film, only they're not going to Paris this time. They're just at an amusement park, and they're walking around and, going on rides and all that stuff. And we get some of the typical kind of foreshadowing with some signs as they get ready to get on this roller coaster. Some foreshadowing, bad things are getting ready to happen, death's at the door kind of thing, just like we've seen in the first two films. And they're about to get on this roller coaster with this giant red demon. And the only reason I call attention to the giant demon is because the voice of it is Tony Todd, which is really kind of a bummer. I feel like his presence was kind of missed in this movie, as he only gets this sort of voice cameo voicing this demon in front of the roller coaster. And I have to say, the supporting characters in Final Destination 3 are especially terrible.
That's terrible.
And obviously, I'm not expecting much with the supporting characters because they're going to get killed anyways. But the ones here are just pretty brutal to watch. You've got the two, bimbo chicks who are just completely idiotic. And then you get introduced to Frankie, who is just the worst.
Frankie Cheeks is old school, ladies. What's that? Oh, well, it'd be my honor.
But anyways, they get on the roller coaster, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead has a premonition of seeing the roller coaster completely wipe out and crash and everybody dying. And the roller coaster death scene here is decent. It's got some decent moments to it. Just kind of the overall concept of it is kind of fun. A roller coaster crashing. It's got the most CGI that we've seen so far out of any of these sequences, and it really kind of gets into, obviously all of these movies, and especially the kills are ridiculous, varying levels of ridiculous, right? But this one really gets into kind of cheesy territory where a guy comes flying off the roller coaster and Ryan Merriman catches him like in the air, and he's trying to hold on to him, and it's just even overboard for a movie like this, where it's just like, come on. And like I said, there's definitely some CGI in there that it just really kind of takes you out of it a little bit. And so it's a decent sequence, but definitely not the best so far in the series. And of course, like the other two films, it's just a premonition, and she freaks out and gets off the roller coaster, and a handful of other people get off as well, some of her high school friends, much like the first film, where some of the friends get off, only her boyfriend doesn't, and he ends up dying. So following the opening roller coaster crash scene, Wendy is at her computer looking at photographs that she took of their trip. And this thing is cross-edited with our first kill scene, which involves the two girls, Ashley and Ashlyn, as they go to a tanning salon. And the film continues to cut back and forth between them at the salon and Wendy at her computer looking at all these photos. And the film doesn't really make it clear here, but it implies that Wendy sees something that leads her to believe that these two girls are going to be killed next. And the movie does this a few times, where her character continually looks back at the photographs, and you can very clearly tell that she has some sort of revelation, only the film waits a really long time to kind of give you what that revelation is. And it was just kind of a weird way to sort of handle and present that type of information, because we don't really know exactly like what she's figuring out or what she's seeing. Anyways, we get the kill scene of Ashley and Ashlyn as they are in the tanning beds. And this scene it's okay. I mean, I guess there's kind of some enjoyment in just watching these two complete idiots get roasted alive in a tanning bed, I guess. But as far as the creativity there and sort of the, elaborateness of it all, it's all right. One of the things, too, that Final Destination 3, I think, gets away from that I really liked about Part 2 is that there's not really as many sort of fake outs and curveballs regarding the kill scenes. They're kind of pretty straightforward, and you can pretty much tell, like, what's getting ready to happen. And that kind of just takes away some of the entertainment factor here. And so they end up getting fried alive in their tanning beds. Although I will give the film here some credit. The jump cut to their funeral service is pretty great. I kind of got a kick out of that. I thought it was pretty good. And so at this point, much like the first film, we have this like memorial type scene. Another similarity, very similar between this and the first film. And then also here we get some more just absolute cringe from the character of Frankie.
If I had seen their, whatever, humanity, they wouldn't have felt the pressure to look so good. Impress Franklin Cheeks.
And it's just like, why do movies like this have to have a character like that? Like, does anybody enjoy this? Does anyone find it funny? Like, what's the play here? I mean, it's just awful. And so now we hit about the 40-minute point in the movie where Wendy is at the memorial for the death of the two girls, only she has kind of hidden back in a way and is visiting her boyfriend's gravestone. Then Ryan Merriman comes over to her and they have this conversation. And unfortunately, Final Destination 3, I think, makes a lot of similar mistakes as the first film in that it's just way too serious. And it's just a bummer. And I didn't mention this was actually my first time watching this film. And I had some hopes that it was going to continue more of the tongue-in-cheek, comedic tone of the second film.
Not gonna happen! No, not gonna happen!
And it's just so serious. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead, her performance here, like, is good. Like, she's clearly talented, and obviously she's been in a ton of more stuff since this. And she's very talented, but her character, like, doesn't stop crying throughout the entire movie. Like, she's crying in just about every single scene that she's in.
But I should have done everything I could to stop it.
I thought maybe he's been with me since that night.
It's not only horrible, but can you feel how vicious it was?
And like, I understand she lost her boyfriend and all that stuff, but it's like, it's just so serious and so like dark and like depressing and emotional, and it's just like, this movie should be more fun. And during the scene when she's talking with Ryan Merriman at her boyfriend's grave, she talks about all of her fears and stuff like that, and like she kind of gives some suspicion as to what's going on. And then there's this like kind of huge moment where this big sort of sweeping wind comes through and all the trees start moving, and it's like, I just couldn't help but roll my eyes because it's just, again, it's so ridiculous and it's just played so seriously, and it's just like, how is this the tone? How is this the tone that you're going for? After this scene, her and Ryan Merriman are in the car driving around, and I believe they're trying to track down Frankie because I think they think he's going to be next or whatever. And anyways, they end up pulling into this drive-thru, and we get our next kill scene. And this is another one that, like, it's just okay, and it's this kind of giant rogue truck that the driver loses control of, and it just starts, going down this huge hill. And it's another example of, like, there's not really any surprise here. There's not really any curveballs. Like, we see it coming from a mile away. This truck's going to come down and smash into their car and everything. And I will give Final Destination 3 a little bit of credit. I think it does up the gore factor, because when you finally get this kill, the engine block comes out and it slices through what we find out is Frankie's head is in the car in front of them at the drive-thru. And so I do like when you actually get the kill moment in some of these kills. They are a bit gorier and bloodier, and so I appreciate that. But the lead up and the kind of the suspense building up to it is, most of it just kind of falls flat. And so now the movie finally decides to kind of reveal what is going on when Wendy is looking at these photos, is that she has, I guess, kind of figured out and discovered that each photo sort of serves as a bit of a clue to how the next person is going to die. And again, it was just kind of an odd way to handle this, as she's been getting all emotional every time she looks at pictures up until this point, and we're kind of just like, what is going on here? I don't really know. It was just a weird way to kind of present that information, but we finally kind of get on track and realize what's going on. And then they find out that the next person in line to die is the character of Lewis. So they track Lewis down and try to convince him that death is after him and he's next. And of course, he's having none of it. He thinks they're crazy and doesn't believe it, which, I understand that that's kind of part of these movies where, they're trying to convince people that death is after them. And of course, it's ridiculous, but it's just like, we have seen this type of scene so many times now, it's just kind of starting to get tired at this point. And this scene is just so ridiculous and laughable. And again, it kind of reminds me of just the tone from the first film, where I just feel like I'm laughing more at it than with it, as it takes place in this gym, and like the editing here is just so bizarre, and it keeps cutting back to all these guys in the gym lifting weights, and there's all these sounds of them just grunts and yells and stuff like that, and it's just hilarious. And this scene, I guess, has a bit of a surprise to it, as they lead you to believe that Lewis is going to get decapitated by these giant swords hanging on the wall. Only he narrowly avoids it, and instead the weight line gets cut on his weightlifting machine, and the weights swing around and pop his head like a grape. And it's another okay scene. Again, I like the gore at the very end when you actually get his head exploding, but it's just kind of starting to feel tired and old at this point, I guess. So they couldn't save Lewis, but next up is Aaron and Ian, and so they track them down, and we have a scene that's pretty much the exact same as the previous scene, where they are trying to convince Aaron and Ian, hey, death is after you, you gotta watch out, it's coming for you. And this kill scene is a little bit better. It's probably the best one in the movie, because it is the most elaborate, and all sorts of crazy stuff happens in what's basically like a Home Depot store. And it ends with a pretty solid kill of Aaron taking a nail gun through the face. Now at this point, Wendy is back at her house looking through the photos again, and she sees a detail that she had missed before, and she sees somebody on the roller coaster with this bracelet, and it turns out it is the exact bracelet that belongs to her sister. And so now she freaks out because she thinks her sister is next on death's list. And so she finds out that her sister is at the town's tricentennial parade celebration thing. And so she goes over there to try to save her sister, and Ryan Merriman happens to be working security at this event as well. And then we get this scene with this rogue horse who goes crazy, and it ends up dragging her sister all across the park, and it turns out she's okay. And then we get a decent little kill where one of her sister's friends is impaled with a flag. And then we find out that Ian is there, and he is more or less kind of seeking vengeance against Wendy because he's upset that his girlfriend died and now wants to take it out on Wendy, I guess. And then we get Ian's kill, which is, again, kind of fun because it's pretty gnarly and gory, but it's basically the exact same and a total repeat of Tim's kill from Final Destination 2. And so it doesn't really earn any sort of creativity points in my book. And at this point, we jump to 5 months later, again doing an exact same thing as the first film where it does a time jump. And this time our 3 remaining characters are on a subway, and Wendy has a premonition again, and we get this gigantic subway crash sequence, which is alright, it's decent. It's got some pretty cheesy kind of early 2000s CGI in it again. That's just kind of like, definitely shows it's dated. And it's an okay scene, I guess, and then it ends. And it ends kind of in a similar vein to the first film, where you're not entirely sure exactly who might have lived or died, I guess. Anyways, and that's the end of Final Destination 3. And I feel about it pretty similar to the first film, at least in terms of the tone. It's just way too serious and too like dramatic and emotional, and it just doesn't work. And unfortunately, this one has kind of the, I guess, unfortunate status of being the third film, whereas the first one, it was a new concept and idea, whereas this one, you're now 3 films deep. And look, I understand these aren't meant to be high concept films. It's just basically watching people die in ridiculous ways. I get it. But you've got to do something. When your basic plot storyline is as basic as it is here, it's like you got to do something at this point. Like, expand on the lore, give me something different, give me some more story, add some sort of unique twist to it that just makes something different about it. And it's just I'm starting to feel tired. I'm starting to feel a bit of the burnout. It is getting repetitive at this point. And so, yeah, look, I'm going to do sort of the 3 score again, like I've done with the first 2 of these. I think if I'm being objective, man, I feel like a 4 for this. A 4 out of 10 is a stretch. I'll give it a 4, but I think that's being generous. Entertainment value is probably a 5, and I think the kills here are probably a 5, maybe a 6 at best. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts on Final Destination 3, but I'm going to keep powering through. Of course, Final Destination 4 is next. And I think this one's just called The Final Destination, if I'm not mistaken. I guess I should have double-checked, but anyways, it's the 4th film in the series, so you know what it is. Anyways, that's all I got. Hit me up down in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are in this one. Would love to hear from you. And if you like videos like this, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. I greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you next time on The Haunted Beard.